Yesterday, I talked about the problems associated with the PE ratio. Today, let's talk about the solution. It's actually super simple. But let's just reiterate what the problem was yesterday with PEs. So again, I normalized the price, the P part of the ratio at 20, just kind of arbitrarily, so we could focus just on the earnings here. So here's kind of a distribution of PE ratios based on their earnings. So we can see, as we get fewer and fewer earnings, that stock should be less and less attractive, right? So the PE ratio, which is just price divided by earnings, should be less and less attractive, giving us the rule that as the PE ratio goes up, it becomes less and less attractive. All right. But we discovered there were a few problems with that. Now, what we want in a good ratio are one, that it's linear. All right. So as a reminder, PE is not linear. If we're comparing PE ratios, they are not linear. For example, a PE ratio of 1 and 1.053 are as different as 10 and 20. They're the same in terms of their difference. Okay. But if we look at these kind of naively, we would think that there's a bigger jump between 10 and 20. That is not the case. It is also true that a PE ratio of 66.7 and 100 are almost exactly the same, but a PE ratio of 2 and 12, which has a smaller difference, is actually very, very different. And again, this comes down to how much is the earnings changing. All right. We also have a problem. We want in a good ratio that we want it to be continuous. All right. We don't want there to be any jumps in the distribution. Unfortunately, PE is undefined at 0. It also has a massive jump when earnings go from positive to negative. All right. In a good ratio, we want a rule that always applies. For example, we want to say the lower the ratio, the better, or the higher the ratio, the better. All right. But with PE, the lower is better rule kind of applies. But again, there's this big, big problem when we're in the middle of the distribution. And we want in a good ratio that the tails are the extremes. So the lowest number is the best or the worst, and the highest number is also the best or the worst, depending on the ratio. Now, if you follow this rule exactly, lower is always better. Then with the PE ratio, you're actually attracted to or unattracted to the stocks right in the middle of the distribution, the stocks with the most uninteresting earnings characteristics, which is exactly the opposite of what you're really trying to do. And we can see what this distribution looks like. Not at all linear, extremes in the middle of the distribution, not good at all. But the simple trick, of course, is to just reverse it. Look at earnings over price. Here we can see the same distribution, the same normalized price, the same earnings that are slowly declining, and we can see the earnings to price ratio is linearly and slowly declining, giving us the rule that the higher the EP ratio, the better. And if we look at the distribution, boom, perfectly linear, no disconnections, perfectly continuous, a very, very meaningful number, and yet we're using the same data so we can get the same information. This is the way you want to look at it, even though everyone on the planet talks about PE ratios. It's if you go to Yahoo Finance, that's what you see. EP is really what you want to look at if you want to make good, intuitive, accurate comparisons between ratios from one stock to another. Now, tomorrow, I'm going to do one more video on PE ratios because there's one other huge problem with PEs, and I'm going to explain it to you and give you the solution to it at the same time. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you tomorrow.